Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome to the bonus show. I have a story here about a man known as the godfather of ecstasy, Alexander Sasha Shulgin. He was a chemist, pharmacologist, and an author, and he basically was known for popularizing MDMA and creating and synthesizing hundreds of different psychoactive drugs. He just passed. He was 88. I guess he had liver cancer, and in 2010 he suffered a stroke. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that this was as a result of his abuse of drugs. I mean, he was 88, certainly not a young man. And he claims to have used one type or another of psychoactive drug every week since he was, I don't know, very young. So, you know, he made the claim that he has tripped over 4,000 times on psychedelic drugs, and he's one of these guys who, I don't know, you don't really hear a lot about, but in the communities where people that have these fascinations with drugs like MDMA and the effects they have, he's like a kind of like a cult hero, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm interested because, I don't know, I understand, I don't know that much about ecstasy, but my understanding is that by chance you can have one bad trip and essentially like never come off of the drug and have significant, I don't know if it's brain damage or just your brain remains affected, and you can really mess yourself up. And I can only assume that 4,000 times is way more than even some pretty regular users of ecstasy would ever use that drug in their lifetimes, right?
Right. Well, it wasn't necessarily always ecstasy. I
right,
think
different ones, yeah.
Right. And I'm not sure if MDMA is the one that can affect you permanently, although I'm sure it can have some permanent effects. I think acid is one of those drugs where, given the right circumstances, you can basically be tripping forever.
That's right. Yeah, no, I misspoke. It is acid. It's not MDMA. You're completely right about that. Yeah, I mean, so what else is known about this guy, or in what circles is he kind of a cult hero? I don't know that much about him other than what I've read in the last few hours.
Well, I mean, there's probably a lot to learn and read about, but I guess it was basically just his work and popularization of MDMA that kind of made him famous. It was first synthesized in 1912, but he kind of brought it back in 76. And yeah, he was just kind of one of those guys. Not a guy who's very popular in corporate media, but certainly someone who was admired, had a following, and
we're learning more and more now about the possible medical uses of MDMA. I mean, I think we did a story in the last year or two about the use of MDMA in therapy for PTSD, which has had some pretty good results. And I think there are a couple of other more recent medical applications that are being talked about.
Right, depression, PTSD, all sorts of psychological disorders or trauma. I mean, it seems like there are a lot of practical applications for it. And he might be one of those guys that we can thank further down the road for that. I think certainly it is worth researching and experimenting with. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think no matter what, if there is going to be a development in terms of the usage of MDMA more broadly for medical purposes, we're going to see the same thing from the right that we're seeing around medical marijuana, no question about it.
I have a story here that is completely insane. An old home in a town in Western Ireland was basically just torn down. It served for a long time as a home for unwed mothers. And this was, I believe, between 1925 and 1961. And this was basically a time in Ireland that being a mother, an unwed mother, was just the most heinous crime,
Right.
social crime possible. This was a very religious country, and there was no bigger foul than being an unwed mother. And so when they were destroying this place, I guess they took apart the old septic tank, and they found the bodies of 800 long dead children and babies. And this is mind blowing. But I mean, I think we can all imagine what the conditions here were like for these children, right?
I think we can, yeah. And I saw some really sickening commentary from some right-wingers where they said, why is it that liberals are all up in arms about this story, yet they're in favor of abortion and killing tons and tons of babies? And and it's actually, I'm seeing that comment from right-wingers all over the internet on both right-wing, but also kind of more corporate or websites of broader appeal, and it's pretty sickening.
Yeah. So you have young women here who were completely ostracized when they became pregnant, not being married, and families would then be afraid of neighbors finding out. And it was just crazy. Of course, some of these were instances of rape. And talk about, a double whammy. I mean, first you get raped, and then you get ostracized and persecuted for being pregnant afterwards as a result of that. And I guess many of the deaths here are attributed to the children: malnutrition, measles, tuberculosis, pneumonia, all sorts of stuff. Very high infant mortality rates at this home. And it seems like roughly, if you look at the records, 2 babies a week were dying at this place. And it is just incredible.
I can't help but wonder, given how negatively unwed mothers were seen at the time in Ireland, whether, let's see, some of these deaths may be due to untreatable forms of these causes of death that you're talking about. But at the same time, I can only imagine that for some of these women, losing their child was a relief in the sense that they could maybe get back to society and not be ostracized, as horrible and heinous as that sounds.
I would imagine so. There are probably some instances in which a woman ends up there, leaves without the child being around anymore, and nobody outside of the home was any wiser to it. There were probably situations like that as well.
Yeah.
And it was just brutal. These children were treated terribly. It's a shame that a lot of this anger, frustration was taken out on the children.
The other thing that kind of angers me about these stories is that a lot of times when we find something out in retrospect that was going on, we see the outrage and we see the news coverage of it, and it's all worthy, right? I mean, there's nothing bad about that. But the same people who are outraged that no one stopped it then aren't necessarily doing that much to stop what's going on to children in many parts of the world right now, right? I mean, if we look at human sex trafficking, child sex trafficking, if we look at the children who die from just not having enough to eat every single day in parts of the world, I'm not blaming anybody. And a lot of times you really do feel like you can't do anything. But at the same time, if this story outrages you, there are things you can do now to help children.
There are certainly plenty of places in the world where children are probably being treated even worse than they were at this place. I mean, there's some places in Africa where the things Coney and his militia were doing to children, like raiding a village, having the children kill their own parents, and then turning them into soldiers. Of course, the girls would just be taken and raped and abused their entire lives. It's completely insane. But yeah, if you can help. As David's screen goes berserk behind him. All sorts of technological difficulties today, isn't there?
There have been some, yeah. But I think overall, today's actually been a hell of a show.
Right. See, they don't know about the problems I always have where things freeze and we have to restart the bonus show. That happens pretty regularly.
Yeah, it happens like once every 2 months.
Probably once every 2 weeks, or maybe even more than that. The Secret Service is looking for software that detects social media sarcasm.
Yeah.
Now, that is some serious programming. Those are some complex algorithms. But personally, I'm glad that they're looking for this. Aren't you? I mean, this is a relief.
There are so many times, not only sarcasm, but just not, in other words, a lot of the programs, a lot of the programs that are kind of looking for keywords are looking for keywords that might appear in somebody who poses some kind of threat might use those. But anyone talking about people who pose a threat might use those words. People talking sarcastically might use those words. And it's time to develop some kind of language that, aside from the usage of these programs being an issue to discuss, that is more related to how language is actually used by people. And sarcasm is definitely a big part of it, yeah.
Right. If you want to go after someone because of one word that's in one of their sentences blindly, that is pretty stupid. I guess some of the orders here for their software is they're asking for a long list of specific things, including the ability to identify social media influencers, analyze data streams in real time, access old Twitter data, and use heat maps. They want the software to be compatible with Internet Explorer 8. Yeah, these guys are using Internet Explorer. And the author of this article points out that the agency is asking for a blanket purchasing agreement over a 5-year period, which shows how often they update their technology. Incredible stuff happening in our government in that department. But back to the software, they are asking people to try and develop this, and they are accepting proposals until 5 days from now. If you are a programmer and you can do it that quickly, I don't know, maybe this request was put out a while ago. But anyway, I am glad that they're finally starting to realize that there are probably smarter and better ways to detect the things you need to detect online while you spy on everyone and everything. You know what? And I think this could help consolidate a lot of that information that would be of interest to them. I mean, they probably just have oceans of data, names, information that probably is pretty difficult to parse through. And I think some well-designed software could really help, and could help individual citizens not get put into Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah, hopefully it would help to prevent some very unnecessary conversations between people and authorities.
Right. So we'll see. I wish them luck, and I hope it happens.
Let me mention before we go, so today you may not have heard it because you have the commercial-free show, but we did have this new advertiser, and they're offering a free trial. The advertiser is Audible. They do audiobooks. The free trial is you can get a free audiobook. Whether this advertiser continues with us or not will be determined by how this trial run goes today. So I would encourage you to go to audiblepodcast.com/David and do the free trial. It's one of those things where if you don't cancel in a month, they charge you, but just sign up and make a note in 10 days just to cancel the thing. And if you do that, hopefully it will help to turn this into a regular advertiser, which would be really, really good for the podcast. And the great thing is you can help us get the advertiser. And because you're a member and you don't have to listen to any of the ads, it won't affect you in any way. I mean, it's just a win-win, Lewis.
Yeah. On a side note, I hear that if you do a lot of driving, audiobooks are pretty great.
Yeah.
But I don't do a lot of driving. I haven't looked into it really. Yeah. So anyway, it might be something you actually enjoy.
Absolutely. So that does it. And just as a little heads up, there is no show tomorrow, Thursday. There will be a show Friday, and then there is no show Monday. I mentioned this yesterday quickly. And then we return to the normal schedule on Tuesday. So when you don't see a new show tomorrow, don't worry. The show isn't off the air. It is a planned off day. We'll be back Friday, off Monday, and then back to the normal schedule Tuesday. So we will talk to you on the Friday show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.